IB Nation, Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Shaun and I are back. It's been a couple weeks since you and I have done an RTCF show, Shaun, but we are back with some fun topics today. We had some cool topics. Shaun had a really good recruiting topic that we were going to discuss today. And then all of a sudden, Rivals releases their new top 300. It's the first ever of the new Rivals 300. Obviously, Rivals used to be a top 250, and it's interesting, Shaun. I was like, okay, how are the Rivals analysts going to combine with the on three analysts and all these other type of things? And so, uh, you know, I look at it and say, okay, man, like how's it going to go? Well, now we kind of have an idea. There's some players that the Rivals people won out on, and there's some people that the on three people went out on. But this looks primarily more like an on three ranking than it is a Rivals ranking with some of these rankings, Shaun. But we're going to go over that. Then we're going to talk about ESPN had a really nice feature. I thought it was a good feature, Shaun, even though we didn't necessarily agree with everything. I thought it was a really well done feature about the biggest question marks for the top 25 teams. We're going to talk about that. And then the last section is there's a report out today. Greg McElroy was talking about how he heard from someone that Nick Saban's contemplating getting back into coaching. So we're going to talk about that and whether we think he should. Is that real? Is that just trying to create some preseason buzz for ESPN and having Saban on the show? Should he do it? Should he not do it? What are some schools to look at? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to have some fun really talking about that today, Shaun. So I'm excited to get going, man. But, of course, I'm always fired up to be able to do a show with you.
Good to be back. Of course, we did the recruiting show with the commitment on this weekend with Vince. But it's good to Vince and Trev. But it's good to be back with you, my friend.
Yeah, Trev was about to get real hurt. You were about to forget about him and leave him out.
No, I would never forget about Trev.
No, you guys, you guys did a great show on that Friday. That Friday commitment as Notre Dame gets one step closer to being done with their 2026 class, Shaun. And it is an impressive class. It's much closer to saying, okay, once they find out what Elijah Golden's plans are on July 26th, so we're now 12 days away from that. Once he makes his commitment on the 26th to either Notre Dame, Alabama, Virginia Tech, or Oklahoma, we'll now have an idea of, okay, this is what this class is. And then probably that next Monday, so probably on the 28th, we'll have a conversation about, okay, how does this class stack up amongst Marcus Freeman classes, Brian Kelly classes, and then, of course, past 20, 30 years and dive into that. But, Shaun, we have an idea of what the new rankings are going to look like. And obviously there was a big shakeup in the last several months. On three bought out Rivals. And so they basically took all their on three stuff, rebranded it as Rivals. They essentially took the Rivals logo, planted it onto all their recruiting stuff, created a second entity. So on three only covers these things, and Rivals will cover these things and recruiting and all this kind of stuff. Brought over a few Rivals people, some Rivals sites, and it's essentially on three with the Rivals name on it. So it's like if McDonald's bought Burger King and said, oh, it's still going to be Burger King, and then they started serving Big Macs. They just look like Big Macs, but they called them Whoppers, but they sure look and taste like Big Macs. It's not really Burger King anymore. But that's kind of what's going on. And they released their first rankings today, Shaun, and it was very interesting to kind of go through them. Some really good things in there, some things they got right, some things I think they got wrong. We're going to talk about it all, and I think it's also the on three, not Rivals rankings, are a bit of a narrative driver in some areas and a bit of a narrative destroyer in others, and so we'll dive into that as well. But I want to kick things off, Shaun, obviously with those rankings, and we'll just first go over the rankings and talk about where Notre Dame players ranked in these rankings, and get your thoughts first and foremost on this. And there were 6 Notre Dame players ranked in the top 50. And there were 3 Notre Dame players ranked in the top 20 of the new rankings, and obviously some big risers. The highest ranked Notre Dame recruit from on three, which isn't a surprise because he was that way before, is Roddy Dunham. Moves up from number 7 to number 6. He is the only 5-star because they only listed 12 5-stars. Why they do that is so they can then do a new 5-star release like 4 times over the next several months till they get to their 32 or however many they're going to have. So you talk about clickbait, that's what that is. They know the number 13 player in the country is not going to finish as a 3-star, but they've got to have things to generate revenue. So they do this arbitrary, we only list X amount of number at a time. But He was their only 5-star. He was at number 6. Grayson McHugh shot up over 60 spots. He's now number 13 on the list. Ebenezer Itade jumped up from 28 all the way to number 20, which is not a surprise. Ian Premer is ranked at number 26. He went down 2 spots. You could argue that the reason he went down 2 spots is because 2 Notre Dame guys jumped in front of him. So, I mean, you can't really go, oh, they dropped Ian Premer. Not really. Just a couple guys ranked that jumped ahead of him. When the guy only goes 2 spots down, it's not a drop as much as it's due to the ascension of other players. That's still obviously a highly touted player. You've got Kari Adams at number 34. That's 4 spots lower, but still in that same wheelhouse from what he was before. And then Joey O'Brien jumped up 52 spots from number 99 to number 47. So we'll begin, Shaun, with a look at that top 50. Notre Dame had 6. The next highest, and I sent this to you, Shaun, the next highest of teams with guys in the top 50, Ohio State has 4, Oregon has 4, and then Bama, Georgia, and LSU all have 3. So Notre Dame tops everybody else when it comes to the number of top 50 players in the new On3/Rivals rankings. Let's first talk about this group and this ranking and just kind of our overall thoughts on it.
Well, first off, it was guys that we thought deserved to be in the top 50, and we're not shocked. And we probably feel like it's a couple of more guys that could have been in there. Notre Dame probably could have had 7 to 8 guys in this top 50, according to what we think. But I just think it speaks to overall the shift that has taken place. And I don't know if it was really a shift, because I think this was always the plan, that Marcus Freeman had when it came to recruiting to Notre Dame and the belief in the type of athletes and players that he could get to Notre Dame. But I think something had to happen, and we've talked about it. The on-the-field opportunity to win and to have a legitimate shot to win a national championship had to be there for a brand like Notre Dame. It had to be there. And I think in previous classes, this is an interesting discussion as well. Like, is the success that the predecessor had, did you really feel at any point that Notre Dame was a true title contender? That's a whole nother topic. But I just think now there's a feeling within the program, around the program, and more than anything, because Notre Dame fans, we complain about this all the time. The sites, recruiting sites, don't respect us. They drop our kids as soon as they commit to Notre Dame. This is different, Bryan. This list right here, having the most top 50 kids of any school, this is a different feel on the national landscape about what Notre Dame is doing from a recruiting standpoint. Now we're seeing a shift in that particular area, which makes this, for me, a bookmark, a landmark day for this list to come out and Notre Dame to have the most top 50 kids, with Ohio State trailing, and which is the inverse of the on-field, because Notre Dame is still chasing Ohio State. So it's very interesting, but
and you need more elite players to pass Ohio State on the field. Yes. It's I don't care about whether they're ranked number 6 or whether they're ranked number 600. I mean, give me 5 Leonard Moores in this class who are ranked as 3 stars, but they're Leonard Moore talents, and we're going to be talking about something. But the point is elite players, whether they're ranked as 5 stars or ranked as 3 stars, I don't care. I just care about getting elite talent. And that's the thing about this, is these guys are all elite players. And now their rankings vary from mine in a lot of ways. Like, I don't have Grayson McHugh this high, partly because they put a lot on camps and athleticism and things like that, and I care more about film and needing to see it. I don't have a problem with Grayson McHugh being this high. Now, one thing to understand is my rankings are never going to look the same as theirs in certain ways. For example, you say, well, they got guys ranked as 5 stars. You don't. Well, if I was ranking the way they're ranking, I would have multiple 5 stars in this class, because they have to incorporate the potential into their one ranking. I don't. I separate the two so I can evaluate where a player is now and then where a player can be. So, for example, Kari Adams and Joey O'Brien and Caden Finley and Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Tade are not 5-star players for me right now. What they are 5-star upside guys. If I was doing a ranking like they do, I'd probably have at least 2 or 3 of those guys as 5-star players. So just to kind of keep that in mind. But I think your point is great, Shaun. There's a recognition of the type of players Marcus Freeman is bringing in, but it's also that Marcus Freeman is bringing in better players also. I mean, even than what he's done in the past, as far as like the really high level guys. You know, there would always be the CJ Carrs and the Kingston Viliama Asas and the Bryce Youngs, but now there's 4 or 5 or 6 of those guys as opposed to 2 or 3 of those guys, and that's obviously a big part of it. And I think what that does is it does show that Marcus Freeman is doing what can be done. He's doing what you and I have always said is possible at Notre Dame, which is getting top players and getting more top players. I think the regional breakdown of it is interesting. Your number 1 and number 3 recruits in the class are both from North Carolina. Your number 4 player in the class is from the Maryland, D.C. area, which is an area where Notre Dame has not done well in the past. You've got a kid from Kansas in there, and then you've got 2 kids from PA. And so I think what I also like about this is the Rivals isn't putting as much of. There's still always going to be Southern bias. And to a degree, it's understandable, Shaun, because of the fact that there is more town in the South than there is in any other one geographical area. But there's still some. But they're doing more to say, hey, look, man, I don't care that Ian Premer's from Kansas, Utah, or Florida. This kid can ball, and we're going to give him a proper ranking. I don't care that Joey O'Brien's a DB from Pennsylvania. Okay, I get it. He's not from Dallas. He's not from Miami. But this cat can ball. And he's done it on the 7-on-7 circuit, which is where I think a lot of this jump came from, is what he did at camps and 7-on-7. So at least there's some consistency there, because if they weren't willing to jump Joey O'Brien up, then I'd say, okay, like now you're applying uneven criteria. You're hyping up other guys because of what they did at camp. So there's an offensive lineman in the top 15 that I'm like, I don't know where this ranking comes from, but then you find out he did well at some camp, and you're like, oh, okay, well, at least they're consistent with it. That's why they jumped up Will Black. I can't sit there and be like, hey, it's bullcrap when it's helped Notre Dame. I don't think you should ever evaluate an offensive lineman too much on what they do at a camp. For example, Tyler Merrill went from number 80 in the Rivals rankings to now he's outside of the top 300 because he didn't do well at a camp. And I'm like, if you know Tyler Merrill at all, you would understand that that's not a kid that you evaluate what he did at a camp, So I mean, it just kind of, On 3 had him as a top 100 player. Rivals had him as a top 100 player. Now he's not even top 300 because of something he did at a camp with no pads on. It's just very misguided in my opinion. But there's a consistency to it, which I can respect. Like, if a guy goes to a camp and doesn't perform well, they're going to drop him. There's some consistency to it. So it doesn't, I mean, it's a bad ranking, but it's not like, oh, it's bogus. That's kind of what they do. But the other part of this too, that I do think is a bit of a narrative driver, Shaun, is the high number of Southern kids in there. And then certain schools get a bump on kids and all that other kind of stuff. I think there's a narrative driver in that after the top 50, there's not another Notre Dame player till 109. But I think overall what this does though, Shaun, is I do think that what I have said about On 3 from the beginning, and it's been true of Rivals the last year or two, is I can't tell you that there's a Notre Dame bias in their rankings. Matter of fact, I would argue that there clearly isn't. And I think what this ranking does is it shows they have biases like we all do. They have certain Southern biases in certain ways. The On 3 rankings have very heavy offensive line biases. Like, you can look at the top 25 and you're like, dude, that's a lot of offensive linemen. That's true every year with On 3. Charles Powers is obsessed with offensive linemen. And that's okay. It's consistent, which I can respect. But it's not a, gee, we don't like Notre Dame bias. I think this is very clear. Because when you look at it, Rodney Dunham could have dropped in the latest rankings. They could say, look, he's got a knee injury. He may not play senior year, so we're going to drop him. They could have done that. They could have said, well, okay, Grayson McHugh's now committed to Notre Dame, so we're going to leave him around the 180s. Hey, let's drop Ebenezer Atade. He hasn't gone to a bunch of camps and all that. Let's drop him for some other highly ranked, uncommitted kid. They could have done all those things. Hey, now that Ian Premer's committed to Notre Dame, let's jump up these other tight ends. They could have done all that, and they didn't do any of it. So you say, well, yeah, but what about Tyler Merrill? And yeah, there are some rankings that they're getting wrong. And they got the CJ Carr ranking wildly wrong. They got the Drake Bowen ranking wildly wrong. But what I think this list shows definitively is while I have a lot of issues with On3's rankings, as they would probably have with mine, I think we can kind of get rid of they have an anti-Notre Dame bias in their rankings. I think that part we can kind of push aside and say, okay, we don't need to worry about that anymore until it, if it changes, then it changes. But I don't think there's any way they jump Joey O'Brien from 99 to 47 and Grayson McHugh from 180 to 13 after they committed to Notre Dame if there was an anti-Notre Dame bias in their rankings.
I think you saying that opens up a very different perspective that you can view it from, because it's almost similar to what we've been talking about on the recruiting trail. Like, what can you come up with to negatively recruit against Notre Dame now? Or is it now just we all have to band together to make sure kids don't visit Notre Dame, or to make sure Notre Dame doesn't land this kid? Because as long as Notre Dame doesn't get them, it doesn't matter who out of all of us gets them. We win because Notre Dame didn't get them, which lets you know they know the juggernaut that Notre Dame can be if all things are working together for Notre Dame. But it also lends itself to what you just said. There are certain things consistently that you want to tip your cap to the recruiting services to say, okay, consistently, this is what you do. Consistently, you give more credence to the offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I think out of the top 25, 15 were offensive, 10 were defensive. Was that skewed because of that tip of the cap to the offensive lineman? If you take the offensive lineman away, it's probably a little bit more balanced. Right. But I think in looking at that, the thing I take from it, Bryan, is that when you look at that, it really says that just like we talk about the negative recruiting and what else is left, okay, the things you looked at now, Notre Dame has jumped into that. They've given you that. They've gotten. No one was more surprised with what took place June 13th, that weekend, and what happened after that. No one was more surprised than the recruiting services. I guarantee 100%. You, every top recruiting service guy was like, Notre Dame's not landing those guys. They're not landing those guys. Joey O'Brien's going to.
They might get a couple of them.
They might get a couple. Yeah. They might get the Friesel kid. Maybe they get Ian Primer because they are.
It is Notre Dame. They might get Grayson McHugh, an offensive lineman.
Yeah. Other than that, no. Kari Adams. Heck no. Can they get Caden Finley? Father went to Texas kid? Nah, there's no way. His last visit is Texas. Texas is going to make a move. Notre Dame's going to lose a kid like that in the end, like they always do. Mm-hmm. And so now they have nothing. There's nothing they can do. They can't. Yeah. What are they going to do? We can't drop these kids because they've been performing well in the camps, so we can't drop them for that reason. Their film is really good, and Notre Dame beat Texas out. They beat Oregon for this kid. They beat Clemson for this kid. They beat A&M for this kid. They beat Georgia. They're beating the big dogs for these kids. So we can't sit here and say, well, the offer list was not the big boys. So
well, Grayson McHugh, you could say that about.
You could say that, but like I said, he performed well at the camps.
That's my point. Like I think that there are positions that they do a terrible job ranking. And Charles Powers is on record as saying, like, they look at NFL draft positional value the same. So, like, a safety's going to be high, which I think is stupid. The players are the players. Their talent's the talent. Like, that's for the NFL draft to predict. They're drafting need and other things that have nothing to do with there's NFL teams that'll rank a guy the number 3 play on the board, but there's no way they're drafting him number 3 overall because there's other things that factor into it. So that's just kind of a stupid thing to do. I think he's terrible at evaluating linebackers. I think they're pretty terrible at evaluating quarterbacks. They get some right because some are just too easy to ignore. But, like, there's a lot they get wrong. But, again, I think when you look at what they did with Charles Jagasol, by far having him ranked higher than everybody else. Gerby Lambert, Will Black. I mean, they jumped Will Black into 5-star territory, and most people, including me, still had him as a 3-star because of what they did at a camp. My point is simply that I don't think that this is a change for On3, that they can't deny Notre Dame anymore. I just think they've always kind of had like this desire to, like, I don't know Charles Powers. I've never talked to him. I've been shown some things he said. I think there's some flaws in their system. But from the people I've talked to, who do know him, it does sound like he has a desire to get the rankings right. I think the system is not always something I agree with. 6 of the top 25 players in the country this year are not offensive tackles. They are in his rankings, but they're not. But because they do this weird positional value thing, that kind of changes some things. My point is that I think what this can do with On Three is we can say there's On Three and how they do it, which is got some good things and some not good things. There's some good things and not good things about my rankings and everybody's rankings. And then there's 247, which is just clearly about clicks and revenue and people's feelings and all this other kind of stuff, where there is a very clear anti-Notre Dame bias because almost half the class are 3 stars at 247. This is different. This is different. So I like that because I feel like somebody in the chat said, well, they may be slightly biased in the past, but this class is different. But again, there's no evidence that they've been biased in the past. You say, well, what about CJ Carr? Okay, that was a bad ranking, but in that same class, they ranked Gerby Lambert higher than anybody else had Gerby Lambert. There were other guys that they ranked higher than everybody else. So I think what it comes down to is their biases impact Notre Dame only in that when Notre Dame signs players at certain positions where they have a pro bias or they have a miss. CJ Carr is not the only quarterback they missed on. He just happens to be the one we care the most about because he's a Notre Dame commit. And that's my point. And I think that acknowledging this is important because we can at least remove that from the conversation with On Three moving forward and just get down to, okay, is their ranking good or is it not good? And I think that's more of an appropriate type of conversation. But I think the bigger point for me is, Shaun, is to your point, it shows that there's a recognition now. What I do think is happening is if there is a bias, perhaps there's some level of, 4 of the 5 DB commits are in the top 200. And we've always said, when is Mike Mickens going to start getting the same respect that Nick Saban and Jimmy Lake used to get or Kirby Smart gets when they go after DB? Say, well, if Nick Saban wants this guy, we're going to bump him up in the rankings. Well, my answer to that is I think we kind of just saw it. You've got.
And I think something else, you speak about Charles Powers, you really look and you really think about what you're saying, and you reference the offensive line, just taking another look at the top 25, 18 of the top 25 are 3 positions.
Yeah.
Defensive line, offensive line, quarterback.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, that's 3 of the most important positions in the game of football. But those are 3 of the most highly valued positions when it comes to NFL draft, building a team. So I think maybe it's kind of like a peek into how he views.
He said that. It's somebody sent me something he said about Joe O'Brien, and he said O'Brien's a great player, top 50. But actually, I'll read you what my buddy just sent me. He said, this is what he said. O'Brien is Rivals' number 3 safety inside top 50. He's a clear stock-up prospect for us going into the release, given what he did this offseason. Positional value plays a role in where the safeties fall, as it's a position that doesn't churn out a bunch of high draft picks. We generally don't have a ton of safeties in the top 32 based on draft trends. It's a very high bar, but Joey could get to S1, safety 1, with a great senior season relative to the competition of the position. This is my point. That's a dumb way to have a ranking. This should just be a ranking of who's the best player in the country, not who's the best quarterback, defensive end, or offensive tackle. If Caleb, I don't care where Caleb Downs is drafted in the NFL. If Caleb Downs doesn't get drafted until the number 14. That doesn't mean he's the 14th best player in the draft. And NFL teams will tell you that. Hey, I think this guy's a great player. I think this guy's one of the 5 to 10 best players in the country, but we're not drafting a running back in the top 10. So, sorry, we're not drafting a safety in the top 10. Do you think NFL teams thought that Kyle Hamilton was 14th best player in the NFL draft? Or do they get into things like, well, yeah, we have to make there's just less of this or more of that or whatever? That shouldn't be part of a ranking. The ranking is who's the best, who's second best, who's third best, who's fourth best. That's what a ranking should be. But here's my thing. They're honest about it and open about it. And if you're honest and open about it, we can look at it and understand it within that framework. And then we can disagree with it, but we can say, okay, guys, you have to understand why he's going to have a Kari Adams, for example, higher than a Joey O'Brien. Okay, you can agree or disagree with it, but at least now you understand it. You also see how many running backs were in the top 25. I think one, right? Is there only one? Was there two? Who was the second one? I know Savion Hitter was one. Oh, the Kroll kid at 25 for Alabama. I look at it and say, there's some, you look at the top 50 and it's a kind of a similar deal, Shaun, when you get past the top 25 is there's not a whole lot of running backs in there. There's only 3 running backs in the top 50. I'm like, I think there's at least 5, including Javian Osborne, but like KJ Edwards is a top 50 player. Kroll's a top 50 player. I don't have Savion Hitter in the top 50. That's just my personal opinion. I like Amari Latimer better, but that's a very clear sign that running back is not valued and viewed the same way that other positions are. So that's going to affect. So like my thing is, as long as you're honest about it and open about it and just be clear with what your criteria is, and I think people can understand it and embrace and say, okay, I may not agree with it, but I understand it. And that's like I hammer on 3 a lot, and I'll continue to hammer on 3 a lot for how they report the news. I think that's ridiculous. But and I think there's some weird things about like how they come up with the ranking. But the thing I'll say is like, as long as you're honest about it, then we can all understand the context and evaluate it appropriately.
Yeah.
But the point that I want to get back to before we move on to the rest of the top 100, Shaun, is I do think that what Marcus Freeman he's completely destroyed the narrative that existed under Brian Kelly, that you just got to shop down a different aisle. And what that meant was from the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Georgias, and the Clemsons. Like we can't go get those types of players. And I've always said, you've always said, that's utter nonsense. Because there have been guys like Rodney Dunham a lot in the past. You just weren't willing to kind of go after them. And they're more willing to do that. But also what helps Notre Dame is when you win, you take advantage of those things. And that's what Notre Dame has done. I mean, Brian Kelly did go out and get some elite players the year after they went to the plate for the title in 2012. That was his best recruiting class, was that 2013 class that got built during that 2012 season. And that's what Marcus Freeman's doing with the 2026 class. So, I think there's a lot of things we could kind of nitpick, and I mean, we will kind of go over where some of these guys are ranked, but I think overall what this shows is that there is absolutely a very clear recognition of this is a talented group of players that Notre Dame is landing. So in this top 6, I don't know. They're not going to gain more, because the only player uncommitted is Elijah Golden, who's not in their top 300, which is just ridiculous to me. The only other way is if somebody goes on and just has a monster senior season and they go way up the rankings, which, we'll find out that's happened. Let's talk about the rest of the rankings, Shaun. As much as I love the top 6, what comes after that, there's a lot of, okay. They did some things in there. So Notre Dame had a total of, let me count the number here real quick. Notre Dame had a total of, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 of their 26 commits were in the top 300. And so that's over half of their commits are in the top 300. There were some Caden Finley at 109. I think that's a ranking I don't agree with. Jonas Walton at number 120. I don't agree with that one. I have him as top 100 players, so those aren't like major oversights. I have Caden Finley probably in the top, he's a borderline top 75 player, like 75, 80 is where I have him.
Yeah.
He was like, I think 3 to 5 points off of being a 4.5 star for me, which is top 75 now, out of a high 600 point total. You know what I mean? And so that's not a bad one. Jonas Walton's probably like 80 to 90 for me, 120. That's not a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Chaz Smith, top 135 overall. I'm there with you. I have him as a top 150 player. Aiden Pouncey, number 152 overall. I'm with you on that one. He's a top 150 for me. Gregory Patrick at 178. It's actually higher than I have Gregory Patrick. Bubba Frazier at 232. I'd have him a little bit higher, but that's in the range. Ben Nichols at number 283. That's really low for me. I have him as a top 150 guy, but you have him in the top 300. I mean, I get it. the two that in the top 300 that I had a big problem with, I kind of mentioned Caden Finley, but the big one for me Ben Nichols, but the big one for me is Javian Osborne at number 139. If you take the 1 away and put him at 39, you're closer than having him at 139.
Yeah.
That's an absurd ranking to me,
Yeah.
Shaun.
Yeah. And honestly, I've talked to people that feel like Jonas Walton is a better back than Osborne. They prefer his film over Osborne's film. But for me, I think you pointed out something interesting, because I'll just take you. We talk about how you view things. You value film, especially when it comes to offensive linemen over camps, right? So in camps, the more athletic kid is probably going to look a lot better as an offensive lineman at a camp than someone that is more of a road grader, interior guy, put on the pass, and now you really get to see his value on the film. And so it goes back to why, Tyler Merrill goes to the camp, doesn't perform well, according to some, and all of a sudden allegedly doesn't get dropped. And then all the athletic tackles ran a couple of drills where they were able to go up and defend some defensive end that was a 4-star. And now they skyrocket, which is absolutely just bonkers to me. If that's all you have to do to skyrocket up the charts. But I think the consistency that we talked about in the top 25 with those positions, I'm really okay, because I have an understanding that you talk about those guys that were like from 100 to like 125, 130.
Yeah, if I got 80 and you got a guy at 120, we're in the same.
The list is really saying, because now we know that you're bumping up these positions, which pushes down other positions. Those guys really are top 100 players, but just the way you view things pushes them down. Yeah. So I'm comfortable with them, because they're basically saying Caden Finley's a top 100 player, but we pushed so many offensive linemen up because we value them higher based upon NFL projections. Same thing with defensive linemen, defensive end, same thing with quarterbacks. So this is not apples to apples, like you said, just judging a guy based on film and production. Okay, who's the better player? That's not what's going here. So you have to take that into consideration. And when you look at a Caden Finley where he is, it's really an admission, based upon how we would like it done. He is a top 100 guy, but based upon the way we choose to make our list by valuing, NFL prospect positions and importance, now it changes the landscape. So I guess it's kind of like a grading
player. That's where. So like
Javian Osborne's a top 50 player. That's undeniable.
Jonas Walton is ranked 120. I would have him closer to 80.
80, absolutely.
Like, I think he's better than that. He's a really good player.
80 to 90 is, I'm comfortable with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Javian Osborne to me is a top 50 to 60 player. So now you're talking about being off like 70 to 80 spots. That is a misevaluation, in my opinion. Like, that is a significant misevaluation, in my opinion. And to me, he's been produced. He had over 2,000 yards as a sophomore. He had over, I think, 1,500 yards last year, despite playing with a broken hand. And from what I was told, he did very well at the rivals camp. So that one is way off for me. I said this. I would have Bubba Frazier higher, but I get why people don't have him higher. I'm a big Bubba Frazier guy. I think he's a really good player. I have him in the top 150. But I get why people don't have him there, because when you're looking at the NFL draft, you're looking at a guy that's 5'10". Like, that's what it comes down to. That's why they don't have Braden Robinson in the top 300, which I think is also a big oversight. Because again, this is my issue with the process. I don't care what kind of NFL players these guys are. Like, is Tim Tebow not a great college player because he wasn't that good in the NFL? Like, does that change any? Does Tyler Eifert not becoming a star player in the NFL because of injuries or whatever, does that mean that he wasn't as dominant as he was in Notre Dame? Does Brady Quinn not doing anything in the NFL have impact at all how great of a college player he was? It shouldn't. But that's kind of what this process has come down to, is like, I don't care what a guy does in the NFL. Rondale Moore, what has he done in the NFL? Does that take away from how brilliant he was in college? You know, Tutu. I mean, they're playing. Rondale's playing when he's healthy. Tutu Atwell's playing in the NFL, but like, does that take away from how good they are? You know, Audric Estime didn't do anything with the Broncos. Does that change how dominant he was in 2023 for Notre Dame? It shouldn't. You know, and so that's my. It's like you're doing a rankings for college football players, and what a guy does in the NFL has nothing to do, or where he's drafted should have nothing to do with what kind of player he was in college. Nothing. And that's like that. That's kind of my frustration by it. So should Mitch Trubisky have been ranked higher because he was drafted higher than Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson? Like that's who cares? You know, it's just like it's silly. Should we go retroactively make Zach Wilson a 5-star player because he got drafted number 2 overall? No, he should never have been drafted number 2. He should have been drafted in the first round. We talked about that at the time. So I think the process bothers me, but like I said, there's some consistency. Here's the ones that got me. No Tyler Merrill in your top 300? Really? Because of a non-padded camp? Okay. No Thomas Davis Jr. in your top 300? No Tiki Hola in your top 300? And no Noah Grubbs in your top 300? To me, those are some giant oversights. Really giant oversights. Not like, okay, I'd have Noah Grubbs 293, but you guys totally screwed the pooch by not having top 300. No. Noah Grubbs is a top 150 player. Tiki Hola is a top 150 player that they don't even have in their top 100, or 300. Tyler Merrill's, to me, is a top 100 caliber player. If you wanted to say, hey, look, I think his feet are a little slower. I don't have him in the top 100. He's more top 1. That's fine. You know, but not in the top 300 at all? Come on. I think those are really, really bad evaluations in this one, Shaun. Very bad evaluations.
Yeah. Once again, it just points to, like you said, they're consistent, and you have to respect consistency even if you disagree with it. At least you're honest about how you evaluate what positions you value more. But the misses that you just mentioned that are outside the top 300, I guess it's just the blind spots on certain individuals within the class. I do think that the Noah Grubbs, I think the Noah Grubbs, I don't know where the seeds were planted, but this has been coming
for a
long time. The Noah Grubbs disrespect. And I don't know if it was after he committed to Notre Dame, but it seems like the seeds have been growing and the whispers have been getting louder and louder and louder. And now all of a sudden, we get this list and it's like, yo, what's really going on? I know he was, part of the Elite 11 regional competitions, and he didn't make it to the national competition. And maybe that's feedback from that, led people to, feel a certain way, but
Brian Smith, I believe, was at that event, and he said it's just they got it wrong. And Brian's, as you know, is very hard evaluator, and he tends to be more critical of Notre Dame players than others because he wants to be able to say, "Look, I'm not biased towards Notre Dame players," and like he's very down on Ben Nichols and Tyler Merrill, for example, and he and I disagree on that. But he's like, they just got it wrong. I mean, they just flat out got it wrong. I wonder if some of this, and this is just pure projection, I wonder if some of this is pushback against his quarterback's coach, because some people don't like his quarterback's coach. And, so because like they've got the kid, they got the other quarterback he has from Miami who's torn it up this summer.
Yeah.
They still got him at 157, 167. Yeah. Now that could be because of his size and the NFL, but still, I think that's a bad eval. And I don't know where a lot of this Noah Grubbs stuff is coming from.
Where is just to speak of Trujillo, quarterback coach Baden Trujillo? Where's Brady Hart? Did I overlook him on that list?
Next year's he reclassified.
Oh yeah, he's right. You're right. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but there's some weird stuff in there, but I think the Osborne evaluation is one I have a big problem with. I think the Ben Nichols evaluation is one I'm have a pretty strong disagreement on, and then obviously Tyler Merrill's one that I have another one that I have a big disagreement on. But there's also a couple that they have a lot. I have that. There's no way I'm putting Grayson McHugh at number 13 overall. Now, could Grayson McHugh end up being the top 15 overall draft pick? Yeah, we've talked about that. I mean, he's got tons of upside. So I don't have a problem with it, but like just being fair, it's not only our only disagreements aren't, well, they have them, they're all too low. Well, there's some they have higher. They have Gregory Patrick higher than I would have Gregory Patrick. And I think part of it is Charles Powers puts a lot into athleticism for the offensive line, which projects into the NFL draft aspect of it. But I also think that it's like, okay, he puts like size and athleticism, all those things factor into it.
You can go. It's Monday. You can be petty. You can go ahead and say it. It's a little lazy. You go ahead.
I think so. I mean, I just think, but I think it's a process issue for me. It's like, look, you keep trying to project 16. Like Rodney Dunham just turned 17 years old.
Right.
I have no idea how you can look at a kid like him and project him, base a ranking off him based on what he's going to do in the National Football League or in the NFL draft. I mean, people who get paid for a living evaluating the NFL draft get it way wrong every year. And that's with talking NFLs. I mean, how many people thought Shedeur Sanders was going to be a 5th-round NFL draft pick? Like 3. I've seen like 3 former players that were like, I don't think he's going to get drafted very high. And everybody else is like, well, I'm hearing he's going to be, this. And there's always guys that fall in the draft. They always get it wrong. I'm supposed to project someone who just turned 17 years old, and you're going to tell me that you're projecting him to what he's going to be in the National Football League? It's hard enough to project what they're going to be in college. Now we're just going to bypass college. The process to me is just flawed. And the ranking should be, this is what I think this player is going to do in college football. That's what the ranking should be. 100%. That's it. That's all. It should have nothing to do with the NFL. Because if a guy dominates in college, but he doesn't project to the NFL, like was Keenan Reynolds a dominant college football player or not? Was Malcolm Perry a dominant college football player or not? Yeah, Malcolm Perry rushed for over 2,000 yards. But they were option quarterbacks. Does that mean because they weren't drafted that they weren't dominant football players? That just seems kind of ridiculous to me. And so should we look back on Trent Richardson's career at Alabama and be like, I always knew he was a bum because he knew the NFL? No, what he did in the NFL is completely separate from what he did at Alabama. Like, I've always felt he was a little overrated. I thought he benefited from just running through big, wide holes. He could just run straight because that's what killed him in the NFL. He's really fast and powerful straight ahead, but he can't read the defense and he's not real quick. He's just kind of and but he's still a great back in college.
Yeah.
Great talent. Does Josh Adams was he not a great back in Notre Dame? Because I mean, he had set Notre Dame's freshman rushing record, ran for over 900 the next year, went for over 400 the next year, was an undrafted free agent. Does that take away from how great he was in college? Like, I don't think that has anything to do. Was Tom Carter not a great college cornerback because he didn't do a whole lot? He's first-round draft pick, but he didn't do anything. So where does it go? I just think it is a flawed process in my opinion. But I respect the fact that they're open and honest about what their criteria is. And so, like you said, Shaun, you can better understand and maybe not get worked up about Jonas Walton being outside the top 100, which he, in no ranking should he be outside the top 100, because you understand it's because he's a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes some sense. So overall, there's a lot of good to be taken out of this, a lot of, but that's part of the fun though, too. It's like, okay, like, let's debate this. Let's discuss this. Let's push back on this. Yeah. No, I'm going to push back on this. Like, even Archer in the chat's like, hey, look, this Notre Dame, this Ohio State commit, like, they had Chris Henry Jr. 50th. That's too low. There's a couple other guys like Carter Meadows, I think had like 2 sacks last year in high school. They have him number 5 overall. Because they're just projecting, well, in the NFL draft. I'm sorry. Give me a break. So because it's funny, as I saw his film, I was like, I like this kid's potential. I was like, but I don't love it. Let me compare his film to Ebenezer Atade. And I watched it literally back to back, and I'm thinking there's no way this kid should be ranked higher than Ebenezer. And they have him higher than Ebenezer, but it's like 5 versus 20. They think they're both great players. I'm not going to lose my, oh, you're idiots because you have Luke Wafel ahead of Rodney Dunn. I mean, Ebenezer Atade or Carter. Okay, well, you think Ebenezer's 20. Okay. Like, okay, you clearly like him a lot. It's like you have him as a 3-star. So it is wild though that two of their 6 big time commits were basically 3-star players, and Notre Dame got on them. If you think about it, because Grayson McHugh was a 3-star recruit when Notre Dame first offered him, and Ebenezer Utade was a 3-star recruit when Notre Dame first offered him. And it just goes to show, this is why I say rankings don't matter. If they didn't change their ranking on Ebenezer or Grayson, does it change the player they are? Did Tyler Merrill suddenly become today a worse player because his ranking went from 80 to outside the top 300? No. It's just a tool to be able to help you evaluate. It does. When I say stars don't matter, it's putting a star on a guy does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion change who he is as a player. It's about our ability to evaluate that player. That's what it means. And so I just, but again, Shaun, I do like the consistency of it. I do think that On3 has been very consistent with, they're going to overrank offensive linemen. Their quarterback rankings are going to be a hot mess. And they're not going to value running backs. They're going to overhype edge players and offensive tackles. 6 offensive tackles in your top 25. Come on. That's way too much. What did they have actually? You said it was so offensive tackles and edges. So there's 6
edges,
offensive tackles.
Well, just defensive line, offensive line, and quarterback,
4,
18 in the top 25.
6. There's 7 edge players.
Yeah.
And 13 offensive tackles. So I'm going to narrow it down even more.
Yeah.
7 edge players. And so over half of your top 25 are defensive ends or offensive tackles.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very clear, we're trying to use the NFL system to create high school player rankings.
And based upon what they do, they're really the only true combatants at the rivals camp. Like, you're literally watching these top 300 guys go up against one another without pads, but you get to actually see the competition, right? I guess the wide receivers go up against the defensive backs in some one-on-one drills, every now and then. But that offensive line, defensive line, you talk about that, being able to view that as combatants right in front of your eyes, along with your process and how you do things. And then the quarterbacks are just.
But it's geared, real quick, it's geared towards a certain type of offensive lineman. That's my
problem. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We pointed that out earlier. The more athletic.
Cody and Jordan Davis are not going to go to these camps and dominate in a way that's going to necessarily be, that guy should be considered a top 50 player.
Yeah.
A way that I'm drawing a blank. The kid that Georgia had right after Jordan Davis, 88, was high draft pick. I can't believe I'm drawing a complete blank on this. I'm talking about the defense. Oh my! Give me a second. I'm going to be so pissed at myself as soon as I remember his name.
Oh, you talking about Carter?
Jalen Carter. Oh my
God! Yeah.
I'm like I'm like watching his film in my head, and I can't remember his name. Jalen Carter's going to go to one of these events and just look a whole lot different than a Lewis Nix is going to look at an event like this.
Yeah,
and that's kind of my issue. Is like a Mike McGlinchey is going to look different at an event like this than a Robert Hainsey.
Yes.
And be more dominant or whatever. And because an undersized technician is going to look different without pads. I mean, a guy like Quentin Nelson's not going to look as dominant at an event like this as he is when you put the pads on and let him go play football.
Agreed.
Aaron Banks isn't going to dominate in an event like this. And that's where I think it can be flawed, where you start putting too much into these camps and these athletic testing numbers. We've seen the NFL overdraft a lot of guys that had all the measurables but weren't very good football players.
Yeah.
I mean, Shaun, how long was I talking about Alex Leatherwood being overrated before
got to the NFL? Yeah.
I was telling you for 2 years, like, that guy is not as good as people think he is. If he played at Vanderbilt, no one's talking about that guy as a top player. Nobody. And, but there's certain things. He was long and he was athletic and he was at Alabama and all these other kind of things. So anyway.
So you think Osborne's your most egregious?
Well, I think Tyler Merrill not being in the top 300 at all is my most egregious. Like, I think that's of the ranked guys, the one that I would pound the table on the most is Javian Osborne. Yes. because you're talking about maybe like a borderline 100-spot difference.
Mm-hmm.
My next biggest one is Ben Nichols. I think Ben Nichols is a top 150 player. I love Ben Nichols' film. But he's another one who's just not going to look good in an event like this.
Yeah.
Gregory Patrick's going to look better in an event like this than Ben Nichols because it's more geared towards what makes Gregory Patrick shine, which is just athleticism, technique, stuff like that. It's not about put the pads on and let's go mano a mano in a Oklahoma drill type of thing.
Thing, right?
You start doing that at one of these events, and all of a sudden Tyler Merrill looks like a different prospect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that's the thing is like so you're taking away the thing that he's best at and saying let's evaluate on the thing that's right now the biggest knock on his game as a high school junior who very, very rarely passed blocks in high school. He's just a mauler. So that's a bit of my
and the tackles are supposed to be used to playing in space.
Right.
That should be the strength of their game. Interior guys is a work in concert together, and it's minimal space inside. So we see these big tackles, defensive tackles they're going up against, being able to run the loop. It's like, you're not doing that. You do that, I'm passing you off, and I'm looking at the linebacker or either helping the combo block the next guy. So yeah, it is definitely, the furthest thing. It's really unfair to evaluate interior guys in situations like that because
Trev, Shaun, they have Tyler Merrill as a 3-star player. They have Thomas Davis Jr., this is the on 3 rankings, as a 3-star player. They have Noah Grubbs as a 3-star player. Braden Robinson is a 3-star player. Tiki Hola as a 3-star player. Devin Fitzgerald is a 3-star player. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's some others like, okay, I think that, I'd have Sullivan Garvin as a 4-star. I saw him at Notre Dame's camp.
Yeah.
I thought he looked a lot more athletic than I thought. But I'm not going to pound the table and be like, oh, you're nuts. Same with Dylan Faison. I have him as a 4-star. I'm fine with it. But some of these are just kind of like, oh my goodness. Like that's just a bad ranking.
Yeah.
In my opinion. A really bad ranking. But yeah, so I just those are some of my issues, Shaun. And actually did they have hold on a second. They actually had we missed a guy. They had Preston Frizzell at number 296.
Yeah, he just got bumped up to 4-star. Yeah.
So I was thinking that was on their consensus rankings, but we missed that, and I'm fine with it. I have him as a top 250 player.
Yeah.
So I think that's again, but it's also further evidence that like why would they bump a Notre Dame guy that just committed who didn't have much of an offer list up to 294? If there was there's no reason for them to bump him up into the top 300 as a 4-star, unless they're just trying to make an honest evaluation of him.
Yeah.
As opposed to a bias. There's no clicks that come out of putting Preston Frizzell on the top 300. It's find some other 3-star tight end or some other tight end who's unranked, who's uncommitted to bump up. So again, I think we can at least kind of get that. There was a couple that I like, Shaun. They dropped Brady Smigel down to 292. I've never understood the people that had him ranked really high. Rivals used to have him as a 5-star, I believe. ESPN has him number 144. I've never been a big Brady Smigel guy at quarterback, so I do think there's some they got right. They have the Henderson kid going to Houston, like bottom the top 100. I actually think he's outside. That's an underrated player as well. He's a really, really talented player. But there's overall, it was fun to kind of go through it. Actually, he's at number 94. It was fun to go through it and kind of evaluate where they had certain guys, and like I said, it was an interesting ranking. But like Caden Harris, the kid that flipped to Georgia from Vandy, he wasn't a take at Notre Dame. Like they didn't like him as much as Chaz Smith and Aiden Pouncey, who are both ranked lower than him. So that always gets part of fun too. It's like, well, who's gonna be right on that one? Or you know what I mean? Like who's gonna be right on that? Notre Dame did not turn down Damari Simeon, who wanted to commit to Notre Dame. Notre Dame said no because they liked other players better. They liked Tiki Hola better. They liked Alistair Viejo better. They liked Elijah Golden better. We're going to find out if that turned out to be a smart move or not. If they can't get Elijah Golden, that may look bad. But it just kind of goes to show that the recruiting services and the coaches don't always see it the same way. That doesn't mean that the recruiting services are wrong in this case. It just means it's just interesting. I tend to agree. I like Elijah Golden better than Damari Simeon as well. But I do think that's kind of part of the interesting aspects of these.
And that's saying something because you like Damari Simeon.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for you to say Elijah Golden, you
Yeah.
like his film better. Because
Yeah.
you were on Damari Simeon
Yeah.
early before the
Yeah.
buzz started picking
Yeah.
up
I just
about the
think they've
young man.
I think he's more of a top 150 guy as opposed to a top 90 guy, which is like, I think they had him. Let me see where they had him. They had Damari at number, I just saw him. He's at Ohio State. They had him at 78. So just, I would have him closer to 120. It's a good player. I just think they've kind of overcorrected a little bit with him. But he's a very good player. It's a very good pickup for it because Ohio State really needed to get some D tackles that could play for them, and he's a kid that I think fits what they do pretty well.
Like there's somebody just mentioned this in the chat. Like, what's the aisle when you do go grocery shopping? What's the aisle that you frequent the least?
For me personally,
Yeah,
wherever the tofu, vegan, sushi, anything like that.
So I don't think we want to say Notre Dame's going down the vegan aisle right now. I don't think
Notre Dame's they're in the prime, the prime meat, the expensive meat, the stuff that is like
the
okay,
stuff
this
that's
is
in the back.
stuff.
The butcher has to go to the back to get it.
They're going after the Wagyu beef, and all that kind of stuff. They're shopping down the expensive wine aisle. I'm over
16,
in the wine aisle.
18-ounce prime rib. Like,
if my wife asked me to buy her a bottle of wine, I'm shopping. Okay, what budget wines can I get for my wife? Let's see here. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a little different. A little different. You're shopping down to fine china. I'm over here getting plastic plates and plastic silver.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now Notre Dame's shopping for fine china. You know what I'm saying? So like that's how it is. But they could always be there. They just chose not to. Got to work at it, and that's the reality. But we also have to be able to acknowledge that. Oh, it's like Brian Bonner's ranked number 62. Notre Dame had him nowhere close to Javian Osborne and Jonas Walt. Nowhere close. Nowhere close to them. Akena Agboku's number 59. He's a good player. That's just too high for me. It's just a little too high for me. So there's plenty of things that I look at and say, okay. The Ryder Lyons one was interesting because I'm back and forth on Ryder Lyons. I've always felt he was a little overrated as a top 10 player, but they have him outside the top 50. So I thought, okay, that's
fair assessment, kind of, taking a step back, getting a bigger picture look. I would be very interested, and maybe we could do a deeper dive and bring it back next week to start the recruiting. Where do the Notre Dame offers sit?
Like in regard to,
as far as kids that, like you mentioned, like Damari Simeon was close, was really possible. They chose to go another way. I'd be very interested in looking at the rest of this list because I think that also speaks to the elevation in recruiting, not just the hits, but the misses as well.
Yeah.
Because when you have a lot of misses that creep into that top, that lets you know the evaluation and the kids and how they're viewing Notre Dame. The narrative is changing as well when you start to get some of those kids on campus, taking visits, and like when you choose and make a choice, like you mentioned, the kid wants to commit or wants to come to Notre Dame, but you choose to go another way. All of that speaks to the elevation in recruiting at Notre Dame. It's not always about the kids that commit.
Right.
The rest of the story is about the kids that you either didn't get, but you were in on or high on the list, or you had to go a different direction. It's a full story.
Like Braylon Womack ranks 36. Notre Dame liked him a lot. He liked Notre Dame a lot. They just couldn't get him in school. It just pretty much just kind of how it went. Kari Wilder, who's number 38. Shaun, that's another guy that I told you the first time I saw him, I was like, yo, when he wasn't ranked real high, I was like, yo, you got to check this kid out. This kid is a dude.
He ended up at Ohio State, right?
Yeah, he came to Ohio State. He's a stud. They jumped him at number 38. So you talk about now he's a kid that the family loved Notre Dame, but he kept telling them Notre Dame, I don't want to go far away from home. I don't want to go far away from home. And then boom, he comes to Ohio State. And then they just realized he doesn't want to come here.
Right.
He just didn't want to come to Notre Dame. I think Felix Ojo at number 40 is an interesting one. I think that's a little too high. I got some question marks about him. Blaine Bradford is at 46. They liked him a lot. He wasn't interested in them. Just looking through it. Sincere Johnson at 51. He was a guy that they liked. He wasn't all that interested. They viewed him as more of an edge, and there just were other guys they liked better as an edge. And the two guys they got at edge are better than him. And I think they also realized we're not getting a kid from Cleveland, Glenville if Ohio State wants him. And so why put that effort into a guy who we don't even have ranked as high as some other guys that we have a much better shot at? So I'm just looking through here. Like Brian Bonner was at 62. It's way higher than the two kids they got. Notre Dame passed on him. They could have got him if they wanted him. So I thought that was an interesting one. Just looking through some of these other guys that Notre Dame offered that Jamian Winfield, Al Washington got on him early. Loved that kid. He's number 80. Couldn't get him into school. He's at USC. It's a great pickup for USC. He's a very talented player. Elbert Hill's one that Notre Dame kind of passed on. Academics weren't great, but they also just they didn't like his projection as well. He's on the smaller side, and I don't know that he's a really super. He plays like a bigger corner, but he's 5'10", 175. I don't think he's at 86. That's a little too high for me. Just looking at some other guys that they were either after or dropped. See here. It's funny, Shaun, is that a lot of the guys they really wanted, they got. It's just like kind of a little bit more difficult. Messiah is 144.
Yeah.
Samote Kodaanga is 132.
The kid he went to USC, right?
Yeah. It's a pretty fair ranking. I think it's a pretty fair ranking. He's a good player. But he was on the verge of committing before Chad left.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically just followed Chad to USC. What do you think of the Max Suter kid from Dunlap in Illinois?
Ended up at Colorado.
Alabama.
Alabama, right.
Alabama.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I want to see his senior film.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the kid. I liked the size. I think when it was him, Jacobson, Premer, like when that initial group of offers went out,
Isaac Jensen.
Isaac Jensen, yeah. I think he was like maybe third or fourth for me in that group.
I had Premer ahead of him. Who else did you have ahead of him?
I'm trying to think. I had Premer ahead of him.
I had Premer and Matt Ludwig ahead of him. So I had ahead of him.
Yeah, I think I had two people ahead of him. I think he was either third or fourth on my list. Yeah.
Like they have Gabe Hill 161. I'm sorry, you can't have Gabe Hill ahead of Elijah Golden. You just can't. Well,
you know what? I think
Gabe Hill for some reason. Let's just be honest about that.
Gabe Hill. We're talking about the same Gabe Hill, the local kid, right?
6 foot 290.
Yeah. I think Gabe Hill, for some reason, picked up a lot of steam once he got that Texas A&M offer, and then he started picking up a lot of SEC offers. That kind of put him in the national spotlight. Before that, his recruitment was pretty much Notre Dame, Big Ten.
Yeah.
It was like Illinois, Missouri, and then all of a sudden
you can't have Gabe Hill ahead of Tiki Hola and Elijah Golden.
I think that's fair.
Especially if you're going to talk about the NFL draft.
Yeah.
You can't put a kid who's 6 foot and probably they list him at 290. Shaun.
Yeah. He's not 290.
No.
280 maybe.
Maybe. You can't talk to me about NFL draft and then you've got him there and 6'3.5", 300-pound Tiki Hola where you have him.
Now I get it. If they have seen him at a camp, he is cat quick.
Very athletic.
On the interior.
Oh, yeah.
Very athletic. So he probably
His film is really impressive. Yeah. You and I have talked about that. Same with King Liggins. I love his film. Yeah. But what's the projection to the next level? That's the question.
Right.
And again, if you're going to be focused on
that would show inconsistency.
That's exactly.
If you have a guy like that ahead of Tiki Hola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most underrated players, in my opinion, and I think even some coaches underrate him, especially down south, is Amari Latimer, the running back out of Georgia who's committed to Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. I think that kid's a top 75 player. He's one of my top 5 backs. They got him at 197. He is vastly underrated, in my opinion. 247 has him as a 3-star. And I'm like, if you look at that kid and see 3-star, I don't think you know what you're looking at. That is one that I think is wildly off. I absolutely love Amari Latimer. Like if Notre Dame wouldn't have gotten Jonas Walton and pushed for Amari Latimer, I'm like, cool, let's do it. He's a very talented player. They list Simeon Caldwell as a safety. and again, I don't know how you can put him at safety and say he's a top 200 player. They got him at 201. That kid's a linebacker. Like, you can't tell me he's a top 200 player at safety. If you talk about a linebacker, then yes, he's a top 200 player. But that one, that one's a little bit interesting. Looking at some of these other rankings here, Shaun. Wow, Jordan Thomas from Ohio State at 225. I like him more than that. I think he's more of a top 150 player. I like Jordan Thomas a lot. If they would have, I had him below the kids they got, but like that, like if they would have got him instead of one of the other, like instead of Chaz Smith or Aiden Pounce, I had him like, all right, like I had them 125, I had him 131. I think he's a little too low at 225. I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite corners in this class. Hezzy Kent, I have a hard time with. I'm like, that kid should be playing defensive line or offensive tackle. I don't know how his game projects to tight end at the next level. I really don't. That's an interesting one. Talanoa Illy, they have at 245. I think that's a little low for him. I would have him higher. I like him. I think he's closer to top 150 than 245. But again, it goes back to, I think their linebacker rankings are just consistently really bad. Braylon Jones at 250, that's too high for me. That's too high for me. See a couple others before we move on to our next segment. I'm going through the top 300 to your point. They jumped Alistair Viejo up to 269. That's fair. I might have him a tad higher than that, but that's fair. That's within your range. They have Connor Solomon at 271. I think that's too low for him. I think he's a top 150 guy. The receiver from Virginia that picked Clemson.
The one to Clemson, yeah.
He's at 271. That's way too low in my opinion for him.
Yeah.
Like, he's a legit. Mason James at 278 going to Washington. I think that's too low. He should be higher. Deshaun Rideau is the perfect example of the NFL thing. He's like 5'9", $180. Maybe.
Yeah.
That kid is a dynamic college player, and he'll be very dynamic in the USC system. They got him at 279. That's way too low, in my opinion. But it is somewhat consistent with what they do. Just looking at the last couple. So yeah, that's kind of my takes on that. There's some other guys I'm sure that I would say, how's this guy that's not committed to Notre Dame but looking somewhere else? That guy should be higher. But just an overall run through of some of my likes and dislikes about the rankings.
And I think we talked about this. We talked about this before, right before we get to the next topic, our team topic. That's where we're going, right? We're going team next. Is there anybody on that 300 list? Because we suspect that the 26th class will be sealed, before the season. Hopefully, if they land Elijah Golden. But I'm very interested, is there anyone in that top 300 that you feel like Notre Dame could spin the block on?
Yeah. Real quick, they don't have Dre Quinn in the top 300.
That's crazy.
Absurd.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
That is absolutely nuts.
That's crazy.
A top 100 player, Shaun.
That's crazy. Absolutely.
That is a pure top 100 player. How do you not have – talk about, hey, we don't have bias. If you can ball, you can ball. I don't care if you pick Notre Dame or not.
Yeah.
That is a top 100 football player.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, dude. You don't have him in your top 300? Whew. And if you want to project NFL, there's not many. You could count the number of defensive linemen would have higher upside than him on one hand before you get to him, in my opinion. He is a stud. I think Alistair, if you look at 300 guy, you said that Notre Dame didn't get that you could see them staying on. The one guy that I'd be very curious is Alistair Viejo. Who's 269.
Yeah.
Notre Dame was not happy about how that whole process went down.
Played out, yeah.
And I don't know that Alistair necessarily handled things well, but I don't know that it was so bad that it was like, screw you, we're not going to talk to you ever again. I don't think that was the case. I've had a couple people reach out to me and say that they heard from some source that, not Notre Dame related, but like outside that, maybe he's having second thoughts. I don't know how locked in he is to his commitment. And I don't know that he'd be super locked in if he had committed to Notre Dame. I just think
he's just one of those kids.
Well, it's also, he set an arbitrary deadline.
Yeah.
And some kids who set arbitrary deadlines, he didn't know what he wanted to do. 2 days before he committed to Michigan, all the Michigan people were thinking he's going to Notre Dame. All the Notre Dame people thought he was going to Notre Dame. And then he just flips to Michigan at the last second for this reason, that reason, and this pressure, that pressure. I just think he's a kid that looked at it and was like, okay, I'm going to do it at this date. And when that date came, he just wasn't ready. And I'm not saying he's going to flip to Notre Dame, but I won't be shocked if he flips somewhere. And that tends to happen for kids who either commit during a visit when it's that's why, Shaun, there was like 4 or 5 kids that committed the weekend of the 13th. And they told all of them, like, go home, think it through, make sure you're cool with this, and then we'll talk again. Because I think what you want to do, because Notre Dame's been burned that way. They've been burned by kids making emotional decisions and then regretting it later. And I think Alistair just kind of backed himself into a corner with this arbitrary deadline and said, you know, okay, I've set this timeline for myself, so I need to do it now. What's funny is there's a lot of Notre Dame kids that had deadlines, but they kind of knew way before, but they stuck with it. Caden Finley kind of, like, Notre Dame has been his leader for a while, but he wanted to see the process through, like Jadon Blair. Yeah. We said last year, Jadon Blair, Notre Dame led for Jadon Blair for months. On 3 Sunday, it's Penn State. It was always Notre Dame, Shaun, always Notre Dame. But he had a process that he wanted to stick to, and I respect that. When I think you need to adjust the process is where it's just like, I feel bad even talking to other schools like Gregory Patrick. I think he felt like he was disrespecting other schools by continuing process when he knew where he wanted to go. Jadon's thing was he knew where he wanted to go, but there was more data he wanted to collect to make sure he wanted to go. And then I think the other mistake kids make is when they have deadlines where they don't move them back. Be okay to move it back. Don't put yourself in this hole of I've got to commit at this time if you're not ready. And I think that's kind of what happened a little bit with Alistair. Doesn't mean he's going to end up at Notre Dame. I'm just saying I think it wouldn't shock me if he ends up somewhere other than Michigan.
Yeah.
But part of that depends on, do they get Elijah Golden or not?
I think that's one of the that's a good candidate. That's a good candidate.
I was going to say Dre Quinn. That's why I looked and saw that Dre Quinn wasn't on there.
Wasn't in the top 300.
Dre Quinn's one that I could see Notre Dame staying on, but he's not in the top 300. That is nuts. But what's wild is, Shaun, is everybody keeps talking about who are you going to flip, who are going to flip, who are going to flip. And I'm like, guys, they got 20. If they get Elijah Golden, they're going to have 27 kids in this class. Like, you need to save some for next year, which is a loaded class as well. Like, why go get a 5th defensive lineman when you can just load up on some guys for next year based on where you are? It's like, like, that's my thing is like, look, I don't know that I'd try to flip a guy like Alistair Viejo, my personal opinion, because there's some things there that he'd have to kind of smooth over some things with me before I'd want to do that. I'd rather just take Braden Parks, Devin Robertson, and then maybe also bring in Jeremiah Williams next year. Instead of a 3rd guy this year, bring in 3 next year. Because if I need to go to the portal for a year, I can go to the portal for a year. That's kind of how I would look at it. But I think there's a good chance they're done after Elijah Golden, if they get Elijah Golden.
I like just kind of canvassing within the last couple of weeks, the 27 kids. I like that interior crop.
Oh, yeah.
There are some that they really haven't had a chance to kind of like, because they've been finishing up the 26 class. Mm-hmm. I think they'll start reaching out, to a lot more of the 27 kids, but there are some that have been
going to try to push
to
close on a couple of those 20.
Yeah, like Parks, Robertson, like some of those, because the guys like Elijah Harris out there in LA, you got Sam Lejeune down there in Mississippi, that are, man. Sam Lejeune came here and ran, I think, he run like a 4.7, 4.8?
Yeah, he's athletic.
At 285, crazy, loves Notre Dame. And I would probably say he might not be one of the top 3 or 4 guys. I haven't seen that.
As the 3 technique, possibly. I think he could be. I think what I think their focus is on.
I think they like him
right now. They like him. I think
they like him.
I think they've been really focusing on the nose type bodies first.
I agree.
That's what I think.
Those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, John, those guys have all, Jeremiah Williams worked out this summer, Braden Parks worked out this summer, Devin Robertson worked out this summer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these kids, Sam Lejeune was on campus. I don't think he was at Irish Invasion. I think he was at a different camp. Or was he at Invasion? He was
No. He came up the next week.
That's what I thought.
At one of the other camps.
Yeah.
He was there because I spoke to him. Al Washington is doing an amazing job. He did a good job in 26, and the early returns from these young men that I talked to in the 27 class, they all have Notre Dame very high on their list. And once again, when you see all of these kids getting to campus,
right,
for the camps, which is something we didn't see a lot of early on.
Follow what they do, not what they say.
Not what they say.
Right.
And so when you see the best guys getting up here for camps, that's when you start to see like, okay, Notre Dame's really zoning in and honing in on some of these big top 50. Because I expect those guys to be, everyone we mentioned have potential to be top 150 kids.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Well, Shaun, that's going to do it for part 1 of our show today. It was a very fun discussion. We're going to get into part 2 here in a second. But before we do, folks, do us a favor. See that little thumbs up button below us? Go ahead and hit that for us. We'd appreciate that. If you are listening via podcast app, or if you just want to go to the podcast app and hook us up, give us a 5-star review, and then leave a message as to why you love Irish Breakdown, why you listen to Irish Breakdown, and basically why other people should listen to Irish Breakdown. And, of course, the best way to stay in touch with all things we're doing, including I did a CJ Carr article that I put out for free. But in the premium board, I took every throw he has made in the last 2 spring games and put them into videos. So you can watch every throw that he made. I'll also do the same thing for Kenny Minchie when I put his article out tomorrow. So you definitely want to check that out. But you can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Best way to support Irish Breakdown. Best way to get intel. Shaun puts intel on there. Brian Smith had something. Did you see what Brian put on there yesterday? That was really, he put through every kid that's committed about what he views them as tiers in their projection of college. It was a lot of fun to read. Some things I agree with, some things I didn't. That's part of what makes it good. My response was like, great stuff, Brian. You don't have to agree with someone to be like, dude, that's good quality insight right there. And I thought Brian did a great job on that. So we're going to get to some stuff about the Notre Dame team next. But before we do, again, make sure you check us out at boards.irishbreakdown.com.